Բարև ձեզ հարգելի բարեկամներ, Սփյուռքի ձայնը հեռուստահանդեսը դարձյալ ձեզ հետ է։ Այս ամբողջ տարին հայոց մեծ եղեռնի 100-ամյակին նվիրված բազմաթիվ միջոցառումներ են ծրագրված։ Սփյուռքի ձայնը նույնպես հաճախակի անդրադարձ է ունենալու այդ մեծ իրադարձությանը, ինչպես նաև լուսաբանելու է Նյույորքահայ համայնքում տեղի ունեցող ձեռնարկները։ Այդ շարքից այժմ սիրով ուզում եմ ձեր ուշադրությանը ներկայացնել անցյալ կիրակի Սուրբ Սարգիս եկեղեցում տեղի ունեցած ձեռնարկը նվիրված Near-East Foundation-ին։
It's hard to estimate how much higher the number of Armenians perished during the dark days of genocide would have been, if not for the swift and decisive action that was taken by Near East Relief Society, currently Near East Foundation. By an invitation from New York St. Sarkis Armenian Church, the director and curator of Near East Relief Historical Society, Sullivan, met with members of our community and presented a fascinating lecture about the centennial history of Near East Fund, oldest non-sectarian international development non-governmental organization. In a PowerPoint presentation, she showcased a trove of rare images from the time the organization was founded to the present day. This lecture was organized by the church as the first of many genocide-related events of this year. Near East Relief was founded in 1915 in response to the massive humanitarian crisis of Armenians and other minorities in Ottoman Empire. With the effort of U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, Henry Morgenthau, and a group of his friends and colleagues that would later become organization's founding board members, including industrialist and philanthropist Cleveland Dodge, who became organization's first president. With the help of then-President Woodrow Wilson, Near East Relief founders established a large-scale relief operation and began to solicit donations from the American public. These fundraising appeals proved immensely successful. In 1921, the organization raised approximately $70 million, which in today's money would be equal to $1.25 billion. The money was used to save the lives of at least 1 million Armenians and other Christian minority groups, and establish orphanages in Syria, Lebanon, Armenia, and throughout the Middle East. American missionaries and volunteers, educators, doctors, and nurses provided food, healthcare, education to over 100,000 Armenian children, who ultimately formed families and gave birth to a new generation of Armenians. The largest orphanage was located in Armenia in the city of Alexandropol, presently Gyumri. The 2-hour-long presentation by Sullivan was very engaging and informative for the audience. Particularly interesting were some of the specific stories. For example, Golden Sunday Rule. This was a brilliantly conceived fundraising campaign which proved to be extremely successful, raising large amounts of money to benefit Armenian orphanages. The organization dedicated Sunday, December 2, 1923, as an international Sunday of the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule Sunday, as it became known, encouraged people to eat something simple, namely staple menus typically served in orphanages, and offered the money they saved as a donation to orphans of the Armenian genocide. The Sunday of the Golden Rule was celebrated in many parts of Europe, Australia, and America. President Calvin Coolidge urged the American people to express a spirit of sacrifice and generosity on December 2, 1923, as part of the larger philanthropic effort. Golden Rule Sunday continued through the decades, with 1930 devoting a full week to it, from December 7 to 14. The Hollywood child celebrity of 1920s, Jackie Coogan, who starred alongside legendary Charlie Chaplin in a film Kid, working with Near East Relief, also took up a cause of Armenians, Greeks, and other Christians made destitute in Ottoman Turkey. He toured across the United States and Europe in 1924 on a children's crusade as a part of fundraising drive, which ended up providing more than $1 million in clothing, food, and other contributions worth more than $13 million today. For his effort, Coogan was honored by the officials in the United States, Greece, and Rome, where he met the Pope.
Near East Relief moved 22,000 children from Constantinople and from orphanages in the interior out of Turkey because it was determined that Turkey was no longer a safe place to run relief operations. 12,000 children alone were evacuated from the Cilicia region when France withdrew. So there was already a tremendous amount of movement, and an estimate of about 15,000 children were ferried on an emergency basis across the Aegean Sea. Many of these children, very young children, traveled on foot on this incredible journey. The younger children and the ill children were given camels when they were available, or they were carried by relief workers. But by and large, very few adults were placed in charge of many, many children, and these children walked to safety thousands of miles so that they could be in Syria, parts of Syria that are now Lebanon, Armenia, and also Greece. Most of the children who arrived at Near East relief orphanages or who were found by Near East relief workers and brought to orphanages were suffering from numerous health problems. All children were suffering from severe malnutrition. Many children were suffering from varying degrees of exposure. As you see here, the girls in this picture walked without shoes for an unclear distance, possibly hundreds of miles, and were suffering from frostbite as well as blisters and open wounds on their feet. The initial focus was on saving as many survivors as possible, but it quickly became apparent that most of those survivors were children and that those children were orphans. There were some adult refugees, including young women who had been in harems and were rescued and put in rescue homes that were operated by Near East Relief in the beginning, and then were operated by other organizations and missionary organizations.
Today, Near East Foundation, as it was called from 1930 onwards, continues to grow and sponsor initiatives throughout the Middle East and Africa, working with local communities on projects ranging from beekeeping to primary school education to micro-enterprise. After Armenian independence, the organization has returned to Armenia and is now actively involved in assisting and building a better and more prosperous motherland. At the end of the presentation, an interactive and lively Q&A took place. Many in attendance had relatives or personally knew someone who has been raised in one of the orphanages set up by the organization. The members of the audience had an opportunity to thank Molly Sullivan for all that Near East Foundation has done for the Armenian people. Many Armenians living today around the world are the very children that have been saved and raised in one of many Near East relief orphanages. In the conclusion of the event, His Grace Bishop Anushavan Danelian took the podium and, on behalf of St. Sarkis Armenian Church and the community, expressed his gratitude to Molly Sullivan for her presentation and to Near East Foundation for its important work.
Կարծես սրանով սկիզբն եք դնում մեր այս տարվա 100-ամյակին նվիրված միջոցառումների։ Ուզում եմ ձեզ հարցնել, ինչու եւ ինչպես որոշեցիք, որ այս առաջին միջոցառումը հենց լինի Near East Foundation-ի, Near East Relief-ի հետ։
Foundation-ը ամենեն բարձրացային աղաղագործայներն մեկը եղած է պատմության ընթացքին եւ ես անձնապես որպես անհատը որ գուքամ միջին արևելքեն Սուրիայեն եւ Լիբանանեն դեսած եմ եւ կացած եմ այն որփանոցները ուր հետքերն են դակավին Near East Foundation-ին եւ այն կաղուտները որոնք կազմված են Սուրիա մեջ Լիբանանի մեջ Խորքի մեջ արդյունքն են Near East Foundation-ի դարած աշխատանքներուն խեղճ որբերը հավաքել, իրենց սնունդ տալ, իրենց կամաց աբակադալ եւ այդ որբերը գազմեցին միջին արևելքի հայ քաղուտները։ Հետևաբար, եթե ցեղասպանութենեն ազատող մարդիկ եղան, անոնք այդ որբերն էին եւ անոնց շարունակություններ քաղուտը։ Հետևաբար Near East Foundation-ին շնորհակալություն հայտնելու եւ իրենց աշխատանքին հավելյալ ծանոթանալու համար էր այսօրվան ցերնարգը, որովհետեւ Անպես մգտվի, որ մեր ներկաներեն շատ չէին գիտեր այս մասին եւ մենք ուզեցին այս մասին ծանոթացնել։ Հաջող մենք մեր չարտի մասին երբ կխոսենք, 1.5 միլիոն հայեր գսենք եւ գանցենք, բայց ձալքերու մեջ շատ մանրամասնություններ կան, որոնք բոլորս պետք է դեղյակ գանք այդ մասին։
It's very important to learn for Armenians to learn about the role that Americans played in relief efforts during the genocide. I think that very little is known about that, not just by Americans, but our own community. And the reason that our community in the United States exists in large part is because of the Near East Foundation. And what better way to commemorate the centennial of the Armenian genocide than by paying tribute to this great relief organization. And right now they're in the process of creating an online museum, and they just fully funded this museum. And so it's important for the community to learn about their relief efforts and to know that there's going to be one place where they can access all the archival materials and learn more about the work of the Near East Foundation.
Thank you so much for this incredible presentation. It was eye-opening for me because no matter how much you read about the foundation, to see it in pictures and to hear it in depth and to understand the scope of the work, it's a biblical work. Millions of people received help, dire help. Hundreds of thousands of orphans were saved, in essence, were educated, were fed, were clothed. For those members of our audience who don't know enough about the foundation, can you tell us a little bit about its origins?
Yes. The Near East Relief initially began in response to Ambassador Morgenthau's telegram stating that there was a dire situation, and specifically referring to deportations of Armenians. Interestingly, the State Department was not his actual target with his message. He was targeting individuals and encouraging them to come forward, to form a committee, and to take action in order to improve life in the Near East and for the survivors of the genocide. Over time, what began as a committee's efforts became a national effort, and the American people became involved. Near East Relief taught that anyone could be involved in this type of humanitarian work, from children to older adults. And philanthropy was no longer the domain of the wealthy, it was the domain and, in fact, the moral obligation of every American.
The foundation as of today has a wealth of information. Archives, documents, photographs that have a tremendous historical significance. And you are trying to put this together in an online museum. Please tell us about it.
Our institutional archives, 100 years worth of material, are housed at the Rockefeller Archive Center, which is in Tarrytown, New York. And they're available to scholars by appointment. What we want is to make this material available to anyone with an interest in the topic. We're talking about photographs, journals, letters that relief workers wrote home from the field, and as well as documents that were produced by the Near East Relief, either for publicity or for internal use. And these are an incredible resource that give us a look into American history and the history of America's work overseas and America's philanthropic efforts. The online museum will offer as much of that material as possible to any visitor who is discovering this subject for the first time, or a scholar who is very knowledgeable about this subject. It will contain information that is interesting and useful to everyone.
And at what stage of this development, this online museum development, you are at this moment?
We are working closely with a web designer who specializes in this type of work, online museums and nonprofit internet presences. We are scanning documents and preserving documents that are in poor condition that require conservation before they can be scanned. The website itself is on target to launch in time for commemoration of the Armenian genocide. Our goal is to launch in early April and to have everything up and running in honor of our organizational centennial in September of 2015.
Of course, the foundation was created as a response to a situation in Ottoman Turkey for Armenians, Greeks, Syrians, and other minorities. And we are now approaching rather grim reality of 100 years of Armenian genocide. Two thoughts came to my mind as I was just listening to you. One is, by releasing these documents to the public, by making it available, you are in essence going to be releasing quite a bit of proof, a physical proof as to what has occurred. Because relief of this magnitude doesn't happen out of nowhere. Because as of today, as you know, Turkey and United States does not recognize the Armenian genocide. Is there one of your goals is to shed light on this part of the history and to help Armenians achieve the justice that they've been waiting for over 100 years?
Our goal with the online museum and with initiatives like the talk today is not so much to present proof, because we really feel as an organization that proof is not necessary, that these documents speak for themselves, that these images in particular speak for themselves, and that in making these readily available to the public, everyone will be able to receive that message that's contained in our archives.
So 100 years of organization's work. Let's fast forward to present time. In your presentation, you mentioned that the foundation has returned to Armenia. Please tell us about the current involvement in Armenia, in independent Armenia as of today.
Our work in independent Armenia focuses on micro-enterprise, meaning that we are teaching people how to start and run their own businesses. In rural areas, we're working with people who are farming, whether it's fish farming or running orchards and drying fruit for consumption and sale. And in the more urban areas, particularly in Yerevan, we are working with women who are emerging from domestic violence situations. These are women with extremely limited resources, and from Near East Relief they're gaining an education that will prepare them with life skills for entering the workforce, and also for the skills that they need to start and run their own businesses.
Thank you for everything that you do. I felt very touched and emotional seeing this incredible history, seeing how much this organization has helped my ancestors. In large part, my physical presence here perhaps has a lot to do with it. And we are, as an Armenian community, standing behind you in light of release of this wonderful archive, online archive. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
All the information from the lecture and much more would soon be released and be available in an online museum of Near East Foundation. The museum will include extended and in-depth archived images and documents from organization's 100-year history.